Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the final lecture for the entire, Star Wars analysis that I've put forward for you. This entire lecture series. And, I am happy. I very much enjoyed going through this whole thing, and I'm very happy to tie all of this together. This is literally tying up not only not only the original trilogy, but the entire 6 movies. So I'm happy that you stayed along this far, and we are going to do exactly that. We are going to figure out how the hell Luke was able to tie all this together. How could we have this little unrefined, insignificant, and, inadequate individual named Luke Skywalker from this place called Tatooine that, is irrelevant? How was he able to, be a hero? How could you be a hero? How could, insignificant, inadequate, dreamer you become someone like the hero that Luke Skywalker is? And the answer, without a doubt, if we're to come up with one answer here, simply, the answer is action. Action is the first thing that, in my opinion, most people struggle with. It's like, okay, you have an idea, you have a dream, you have something that you actually want to implement in the world, and you think you might actually do it. Let's say you're an entrepreneur, and you say, or I want to be an entrepreneur, but, I have this way that I really want to impact the world, but it's a little too risky, or I really don't want to do it. Or let's say you're in a relationship and you really need to stand up for yourself. We've all had this, struggle where there's someone, let's say a parent, a friend, or an intimate partner who we know that there's an elephant in the room. We know that there's something that we need to tell them, and it would make the relationship so much better, whatever it is. And for whatever reason, we're afraid to say it. We're afraid to speak out. We're afraid to take action. And, this is what makes heroes so admirable. This is what makes them the best. You have this unrefined individual who looks at the stars, who looks at this binary sunset and just wishes that he could be something. And the only thing that actually brought him there, this is the 4th movie, right? He found something that was meaningful to him. He pursued his meaning drives, and he took action. He established himself as an individual. Then he started training up. He figured out the personality conflict, confronted the shadow, which he hasn't fully done yet, but he did it a little bit. And he had this, arbitrary belief system. And, now he's got a whole new list of problems. He's got to confront the, problems of his previous culture, problems of the world in which he was in internally. He had to confront his own problems first. Think about that. And then he had to confront the problems of the world. That's the Michael Jackson idea, right? I'm starting with the man in the mirror because, how are you supposed to take on the world if you can't even take on yourself? It's like, he's already done that, right? We could start with that idea. He's already done that, and maybe that's the hardest part. That's what the entire 5th movie and first half of the 6th movie was all about. That's not an easy thing. So, the last part is action, and that's what we're going to get into today. So, evil, Darth Vader, says, I'm going to let them in. They essentially try to attack, and he says, I'm going to let them in. I want to handle them. And Luke does the same thing. So Luke, as the hero he is, says, I'm going to go and confront Vader. Doesn't shy away from it. Doesn't really worry about, the plans or the plots or whatever. He just says, I'm going to hand myself over. I'm going to do it. And that's exactly what he does. He surrenders to the stormtroopers. Nothing crazy. That's it. And And I think that's a really good idea. You know, one of the things that really stops me from taking action personally is something like plans. You know, I say, okay, you know what, maybe I'll do it when I have something more formulated, when I have something kind of figured out. I had this problem with this problem with business. You know, you try to start up a business, and I'm like, yep, you know, maybe I should start planning a little bit more. Maybe I should formulate the idea a little bit better. It's like, no, just go, just take action, just do something, because, well, there's this idea. It's called the GI Joe Fallacy, and it's very simple. Creating the idea solves about, or knowing in the GI Joe terms, it's 10% of the problem. Knowing what to do is 10% of the problem. 90% of it relies in action. 90% of it relies in you acting out in the world. Because you think about it, we do this all the time. You imagine something like working out. You say it's going to be super easy, or at least you hope that it's going to be super easy. In your mind, you have this sort of fantasy of, you know, I'm going to start working out and it's going to be so awesome. It's going to be incredible. And God, my life's just going to turn around. How amazing. And then you start picturing these fantasies of how incredible it's going to be. I've done this so many times. And then it all comes crashing down. It's like, well, what's the problem? The problem was that your model of the world, the way that you thought, was different than the than the world itself. And the only way that you could iron out those two ideas, the only way that you could, make your model of the world correct, is to implement it in the world. If you don't implement it, then you'll always be something like naive. And well, people struggle with this all the time. Whenever I speak to people, I find that they make some rash assumptions. And if you've ever taken any, science course ever, or mostly any science course ever, you'll realize that some of the things that they find in those scientific experiments are exactly the opposite of what you'd expect. Completely the opposite. Everything that you see, is rather counterintuitive. And many of the assumptions that we make is, they're completely wrong. And then that creates a completely wrong model of the world, and then that completes that makes you act out improperly. And, that's maybe one of the worst things that you could do. So the question is, what is the solution to that? It's something like, take action in the world. Actually test your ideas in the world. And if they work, then they work. And your model is your model is more likely to be correct. But if they don't work, then if you never test them, then you'll never know if what you believe to be right is right. And, that's a problem. So, this is why the hero, in general, is constantly confronting and fighting the dragon, right? Joseph Campbell said this quite elegantly. He said that a hero's journey is not just one thing. A life doesn't consist of just one hero's journey. It consists of hero's journeys stacked on top of each other. And, the continual progress. You imagine that you try to take on any sort of skill. What you're doing is you have an entire hero's journey. Let's say you want to learn the piano. So you have the entire hero's journey. I want to be good at piano. But then you could break it into each individual parts and say, if I learn this lesson, that's a hero's journey. I'm going to go through every single step. I don't need to get into it. And then this hero's journey is going to help me on my next hero's journey. And then they're going to keep coming together. And you can imagine that each individual hero's journey is a subset of all of the hero's journey of playing piano, which is a subset of your life, which is a hero's journey in and of itself. And we could even think about that as the simplified definition of a hero. What is a hero? A hero is not, a person that acts. A hero is he who acts, right? It is a fundamental part of his identity that he constantly confronts the unknown and defeats it, right? That's exactly what Luke does throughout all three of these movies, and since movie 4. He's doing this all the time, and each action is not separate, right? Literally, his identity itself rests on the fact that, well, I am a hero and heroes act. And whenever heroes don't know something, or know something and it's not acting itself out in the world, they do something about it. That is a hero fundamentally. And you could see that in all areas. It's like, what is the person who the hero who decides to run into the burning building to save somebody? It's like, it's he who acts. What is the person who gives to charity? It's not he who considers giving to charity and might do it someday. No, it's the person that gives to charity. It's man, what was the quote for that? It's a beautiful quote. It's, the smallest act of kindness is greater than the grandest intention. One of them will make you a hero. One of them will, well, make you nothing. So this is what he does, and, well, he does the hero thing. Not only does he confront it, but he confronts it voluntarily. He decides, I am going to confront Vader on my own will. So he tells him essentially what he's doing, right? And his idea, he says, Anakin, it is the name of your true self you've only forgotten. And he says, I know there is good in you. And this is one of the most beautiful scenes that I think Star Wars has, or at least one of the most beautiful frames. You have, I know there's good in you, he says, to the black, faceless machine that, well, doesn't look like he's anything. He does not look like he's a person. He doesn't look like he has any good in him. But Luke still fundamentally believes that there's good in him. And one of the reasons that he's allowed to do this is very simple. He doesn't see the world as tools anymore. He's overcome that. He's overcome the economic world, the economic shallow world in which he has been placed, and that is the representation of him killing Jabba the Hutt. Right? When he kills Jabba the Hutt, he kills off that, well, let's say, part of himself that only cared about money, things, and the surface level. And say that gave him the ability to see into people. So Darth Vader comes to him and he says, it's too late for me, son. And I think this is quite wise. It's quite wise. Well, first of all, it's wrong, right? It's wrong. And the reason why it's wrong is something that we've actually already established. Who is Darth Vader? Is Darth Vader the person that he is, or the person that he can be, right? And when we had Luke standing over here looking at the binary sunset, what did we come to the conclusion? Not only is he the person who he is, who acts, who behaves, but he's also the person that he can be. He's the potential within him that can be actualized. It's not like once you've chosen a path, you are stuck on that path. And Vader doesn't understand that yet, and maybe that's because in the third movie, chose a path, and he became single-minded, right? He became the person that, well, he executed all the Jedis and he executed all the Separatists. So, and he also executed all the kids. So not only did he separate himself from the other structures that could possibly exist, he also separated himself from the potential within him to the dreamer, the potential within him to manifest a new idea that is outside of the current structure in which he is stuck in. And when he says, it's too late for me, son, he's really saying, I can't even think of a way to get out of my unfortunate predicament. And well, this really stretches it to its limits, right? This is such a beautiful idea. It's like, even if you're 60, even if you've wasted your entire life, and even if you've, well, done some of the worst atrocities possible, no matter what, there's still good in you. There's still some sense of good in you. There's still some sense of humanity in you, even if you've, well, gotten rid of it. Even if it seems as if it's not showing itself on the outside. Even if you look like Darth Vader. Emotionless, anti-human, and, well, willing to sacrifice everything for this, right? This Palpatine, Darth Sidious character who is, well, just a mistake, right? Just an absolute mistake. He's the wrong path. He's the He's not the road less traveled by. He's the road that everybody travels by. And and many people choose wrong. So what happens is, I think it's really interesting. So what we're getting into now, and this is where he confronts Darth Vader and he confronts Sidious and he confronts them together. We're getting into a personality conflict with the Shadow. It is perfectly combined. You have Luke is stuck between two personalities. He has the personality of anger that he must overcome, and he has the calm. Let me get the quote here: calm, at peace, and passive personality that a Jedi should have. And these two ideas are gonna come into conflict. And you can imagine every time you make a decision, these are the two personalities that come to conflict. Maybe it's not anger, maybe it's something else. When you decide to quit smoking, right? What is the personalities that come to conflict when you're considering picking up the cigarette again? It's like the rational but also calm person that wants to quit cigarettes, or the impulsive person that really wants to pick up the cigarettes and really wants to start smoking again. Those two personalities are at conflict in that moment, and it's just a question of how do you act it out? How do you learn how to control these personalities and sort of control the switch between them? He says, everything that has transpired has done so according to my design. He actually wants him here. And the reason why he wants him here is very simple. He wants to, quote, strike me down with all of your hatred. He wants to be, not killed, because he has sort of like a backup plan. But the only thing that he's trying to do is very simple. He's trying to manipulate the personalities that Luke is expressing. That's exactly what he did with Anakin. He says, he tries baiting him, he tries doing all that he can, he tries to, say that his friends are going to die and that the rebellion is going to be crushed. He's doing whatever he can to appeal to his anger, to trigger his anger. And you can imagine that when you're smoking, it's the same idea, right? When you're quitting smoking and thinking about getting back, it's like, there were 4 things that went wrong today. Maybe I was a little bit stressed. Maybe, I told off one of my employees, right? Maybe all these things happened. Maybe something went wrong in my relationships, and only one of them has to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Only one of them has to hit you in the right spot for you to be like, screw it, I'm done. I'm having some cigarettes. I can't handle it anymore. And this is exactly what the devil essentially is trying to do. Sidious here, he's saying, let's figure out what gets you going. Let's figure out what is the thing that flips you into this, hatred. And the thing that he does is, sacrificing his friends. So he says, your friends are going to die, and Luke gives in. He gets his lightsaber, tries to strike him down, and fails. So he tries to strike him down, and Darth Vader kind of protects him. So we'll say 1 point Sidious, right? 0 points Luke, because, you'd imagine that the idea of a hero confronting a villain, you'd imagine that it's something like smooth sailing. It's like, hero takes down dragon, defeats him, and end of story. Great. But first of all, not even close, right? Not even close. But Star Wars did something that's really incredible here. They said, this is not a physical battle. It's not a battle between who's stronger. It's not a battle between who has the best tactics. It's a psychological battle. Whenever you are getting into, let's say, a decision, whatever that may be, it is a psychological battle between, the devil and the angel, roughly speaking. And Luke's got to grapple with that, right? He's got to grapple with this. For this specific hero's journey, for this one moment in time, he has to grapple with that. And again, this is the idea that I find to be the most relevant. You make this decision every single day. Your personalities are in conflict like this every single day. Maybe you're watching this lecture because you're because it's the place where you want to be. It's the place where you know you should be, and, well, you're happy about it. You're saying, well, this is great. I'm learning and I'm getting information out of this. That's hopefully why you're here. But then there's also a potential that you're watching this lecture because you're avoiding something, that you're doing something that you're watching this lecture because there's something that needs to be out there and you're probably procrastinating a little bit on it. There are two methods there. And you could imagine that when you decided to watch this lecture, there was a competition between the devil and the angel, right? If you're watching this lecture because it's good for you, then the angel won. If you're watching it because it's bad for you, then the devil won. And every single time you make a decision, that's exactly what you're doing. You're having this internal fight between Sidious and Luke every single time. And, well, that's the idea, one sin at a time. People degenerate one sin at a time. And, well, that's one of those things. If you could control the decisions that you make every single day, those 3 to 5 critical decisions that you make every single day, which starts in the morning, by the way, the first decision that you make, then you're deadly. Then you're absolutely deadly. Then you can, make a huge switch. You could really make a huge switch in your life. It's first of all, that's not easy. We'll say that's controlling your personalities. That's one of the hardest things you could do. But at the same time, if you could do it, man, it's the amount of improvement, the amount of productivity, the amount of, just benefit that you'll get overall in achieving your goals is massive. And so he fails once, and then he gains control, right? He gains control. And he says, I will not fight you, Father. I feel the good in you, the conflict. And he regained control. Good. Psychological battle. Let's say 1 point Luke. 1 point Sidious still. And and then Darth Vader says, if you he does the same thing as Sidious. He kind of searches around. He says, okay, what's going to be the thing that ticks him off? And he says, if you will not turn to the dark side, then perhaps she, Leia, will. And you can see Luke here. It might be a little dark, but he says, never! And he is fully encapsulated by rage, anger, all of it. And essentially every single thing that the Jedis are not supposed to do. Fear, anger, aggression. So you ask, if this is a personality conflict, who's winning, right? That's Vader 2. And that's exactly what he wants. He found the straw that broke the camel's back. He found the thing that where he was most vulnerable, and he won. You can imagine something like this in careers too. It's why is the most common explanation for why people choose a job that they hate is, I'm providing for my family. It's because that's your weak spot. And it's a good thing. Sure, yes, you are choosing the thing that you love, right? And you are, sacrificing a part of yourself to prop up the ones that you love. But the problem with that is this movie says that the problem with that is very simple. It's then all it did was figure out where you were the weakest and told you to, give up a part of yourself. You didn't have to give up a part of yourself. You could have had your cake and eat it too. That's what a hero does. A hero has his cake and eats it too. He will say, if money's really what you're struggling with, you pursue whatever you love and then find a way to make money out of it. And you ask, have people done that? Yes, people have done that. But you have to grind very, very hard for it. You have to do the things that most people aren't willing to do. But you could have your cake and eat it too. The idea that it's noble to say, I'm providing for my family. It's half noble. It's half noble because really what greed did, what making money as your highest value did was find the thing that you loved and exploited it. And made you do exactly that. It made you go for something like tyrannical order and killing off the dreamer within yourself. So this is what Luke's struggling with. Vader and Sidious 2, Luke won because anger again. And he wins, right? He wins. And when I say he wins, he cuts off Darth Vader's hand and has him to the point of death. But now you ask the question, did he win? Right? This is the fundamental problem within this this is the fundamental, we'll say, mind trick in this movie. It's very simple. It's like, even if Luke wins, he doesn't win. If he wins the battle, he doesn't win, because Sidious comes along and says, your hate has made you powerful. He's saying, when you decided in that moment where you just defeated Darth Vader, in the moment where you just violently cut off the hand of your father and did it out of rage, it gave you strength, it gave you power. And even though it turned you a little bit closer to the dark side, even though you had to give up your morals to do it, it made you more powerful. Man, that hits, right? That really hits. And well, again, that goes along with the idea, right? He now is given the offer. He's given the offer. Sidious tells him, slay your father and take your father's place at my side. And he's given the offer. He's given the ultimate offer. Have all the material success in the world. Have all the status that you could possibly want. But be subservient to me. And I don't mean be subservient to a person. I mean be subservient to my ideals. Be subservient to hate, fear, aggression, pleasure, anything material, status, fame. Fame's a big one. Power, money, all of these things. Be subservient to me, and, well, you can win, right? What he's really saying is, when you just became hateful, when you just embraced your anger, it made you win. And I'm going to show you, if you keep doing that, you're going to win a little bit more. That's a pretty good pitch. Let's not lie to ourselves. The dark side, which gets us all the time and gets everybody every single day, sort of claims its victims, well, it has a good pitch. It has a good pitch. You could imagine, well, this is what I was speaking about before. You know, there's all these flaws with the Jedi Order. Yes. And what is the thing about Palpatine? What is the thing about the Sith? Yes, it's all powerful. Yes, it's freeing. Yes, it's, well, all-knowing, kind of. Well, it allows you to be open. It allows you to fulfill all your desires, and it allows you to be free. It's like, that's a pretty good deal in the short term. You know, it's a pretty good deal until you realize that you're giving up a part of your soul to do it. You're giving up, well, in this case, your values. You're giving up your morals. You're giving up, in this case, the dreamer within you. And again, this can be summed with the beautiful quote, why did I forget the quote? The problem with the rat race is that at the end of the day, you are still a rat. He's saying, ditch your stupid little humanistic Jedi ideals. Give in to, well, join the rat race and you will win the rat race. It's good for you. Good for you, but then he's just telling him, I'm going to make you a rat. And you ask the question, what is the thing that gets Luke, that turns him to the good side in this case, right? He's just consumed by fear, anger, and aggression. He's consumed by the desire for destruction, villainy, and the thing that consumes him, the thing that turns him is very simple. He sees that he just cut off Vader's arm. Then he looks at his arm, and he realized that he put a glove over it. And he realized that he's part machine. And he comes to the conclusion. He confronts his shadow and says, throughout all this time, I was becoming closer to Darth Vader. Every single moment. Darth Vader cut off my hand, I became 5% machine. Then I became ashamed of myself. Shame is something like fear, and also I rejected my self-consciousness. I rejected myself when I put this glove over my hand. I decided that I wasn't going to embrace the fact that Darth Vader is my father. And every single moment, I've become more like Darth Vader. I've become more evil, and I haven't even realized it. And when he sees his hand, he realized that one sin at a time, he is, becoming a machine. He's becoming Darth Vader. He's moving towards the dark side. And God, then what does he do? What is he doing in that moment? He's confronting his shadow. He's becoming conscious of the fact that the evil lies within him, the thing that he's been ignoring this whole time, or at least trying to protect himself from. He notices it, he controls himself, and he says, I'll never turn to the dark side, and throws away his lightsaber. And what does it mean when he throws away his lightsaber? This is the perfect, let's say, solution to his problems. He says, I'll never turn to the dark side, throws away his lightsaber, and says, there's a part of me that's machine. I've realized that. I know that now. The only thing that I can do to overcome this, the only thing that I can do to not be overcome by my shadow, to not let it, consume me like it did my father, is very simple. I must sacrifice the thing in which I love the most. Sacrifice the thing in which I value the highest. And in this case, he makes the ultimate sacrifice, the hero's sacrifice, and he sacrifices his life. And this is a very, you do this all the time, right? You say, I'm going to give up food, right? I'm going to give up chocolate. Yeah, you say, I'm going to give up chocolate. What are you really saying? You're saying, I just chose a higher value. I chose something that, should make me happier, and I'm going to move away from this pleasureful Darth Sidious character. But this impulse to pleasure, you could say, and what are you really doing? You're sacrificing the part of you that craves chocolate. You're sacrificing a part of you that has been consuming you this entire time. That's not a trivial thing. It's not an easy thing. You're not just getting rid of the chocolate. You're getting rid of the part of you that desires the chocolate. And then you take that a step higher and you say you're getting rid of a fundamental part of your personality, because most likely you've integrated, let's say, overeating into your daily schedule. You've integrated it into your daily life. Maybe you've even integrated it into your social personality. Like, there are a lot of people who pride themselves on being a big guy, who pride themselves on being big, right? On being big. And for you to give up food, you're not just giving up food, you're giving up everything that comes with that. And you're giving up a part of yourself. That's chaos. That's complete chaos. And while it's completely noble, it's like you're losing a part of your identity. You're losing a part of you. And now I think you can understand why people don't do it. Let me see if I could find it. There was right here, you have Harvey Dent. Harvey Dent is the archetypal representation of this in Batman in The Dark Knight, right? Harvey Dent loses a part of his face. He loses a part of himself. He sheds off a part of his identity, which you should do as a hero, and it burns off. And what should you do? The answer is rebuild yourself with the pieces. The reason why, let's say you tear down a house or you tear down a part of a house is because, let's say a room, right? You tear down the room because it's flawed. But you don't leave the room there. You repaint it and you redecorate it and you make it better. And even though there was an identity there, even though there was something that, well, was stable and secure and didn't really need to be touched, you said this could be improved. So you tear it apart and you build something up that is better. And, well, so you have Harvey Dent, who doesn't do this. Harvey Dent says, I'm just fine with the pieces. I'm just going to descend into chaos. You have Luke, who's willing to sacrifice this. He's willing to let a part of him burn off. He's actually willing to let, well, his old self die off, the person that he is. And, well, that is the thing that's going to create a better you. That sacrifice is the thing that's going to create a new you. And, well, that's quite beautiful. There's another way of looking at this, which is very simple, right? This is the death and rebirth idea. It's like Luke is allowing himself to die. He's allowing the you that he is, the person that he is, die to allow for the resurrection of the person that he could be. And it's a similar idea. It says that you must be willing to burn off a part of yourself to resurrect the next part of yourself, to resurrect the better part of yourself. And, well, you can imagine that every time you set a goal, this is exactly what you do. So he takes the price for it, right? He takes the price for it, and this is beautiful cinematography here. But you have Sidious goes in. Well, he says, "You will die. You will die. I am going to kill you. You decided to sacrifice yourself. Let's see how much pain you could take. Let's see how much you could struggle with it." Because you could just come to a conclusion that, I'm going to sacrifice food, and I'm also going to change my identity a little bit. But the question is, are you going to act it out to the very last breath? And Luke does that. He could easily say, stop. I'll go to the dark side. I'll do it. Whatever you ask. But he's strong enough to take the pain, to take the suffering that comes with it, and, well, shed off his old self. Shed off the part of him that's dark, shed off the part of him that's angry, and shed off, well, the dark side. So he does that, and luckily you have Darth Vader. We're going to complete his story here too perfectly, and it's very simple, right? Actually, we're not there yet. But Darth Vader simply takes him. He says, this is wrong. There's a part of me that feels this is very wrong, and there's something that I can do about it. I don't want to watch. Well, what he does here, right, when he obviously kills Sidious, right, he really says, I'm changing my value system. My value system was once I am going to serve Sidious to the end. He is my master, I am his slave, and I'm going to serve him. I am going to obey the dark side. But when he looks at Luke dying, what he really says is, maybe there's something that I value more than that. Maybe I value, in this case, my son, right? I value humanity over my Lord, over my boss, over my flawed value system. And that's why he kills Sidious and destroys that flawed value system. Very simple. And in doing this, he fulfills the prophecy. In doing this, Vader, to conclude his character arc, is, well, simply, he destroys the Sith and returns balance to the Force. Beautifully done. And not only that, but well, he gets struck by Sidious. He gets kind of struck by the lightning a little bit and says, all right, I'm dying. I'm accepting death. I'm done, and let me take off this mask. Let me look at you with my own eyes. And you ask the question, what is he left with, right? So it's been 20 years, and he has not been, well, a human. Throughout that time, he has not been a human. He has completely forgot the human part of himself. And what you are left with is what is known as the undeveloped self. You're left with this frail, crippled, old, scarred being that, well, barely even resembles a human. And the reason why, and the reason behind the undeveloped self is very simple. If you don't grow yourself, if you stop becoming the hero who keeps confronting things and embracing chaos and learning along the process, you decay. You decay. And you stop, well, the person that you were in your 20s, let's say, the person that you were that was young and ambitious and wanted to make a change in the world, that person not only stopped growing, but it actually decayed. And it's almost as if he forgot how to be human. So that's why he's old, crippled, decrepit, and almost unhuman, but barely human. And well, you can see this very simply in the idea of most people in their 30s regret that they didn't work hard enough in their 20s, right? What do you do when you're 30 and you realize that you wasted your 20s? You have to rediscover the person that you were when you were 17. If you've ever seen the movie 17 again, that is exactly what that is. It's a really profound and deep movie, even though it wasn't really that popular, but it's very simple. It's like, yes. You stop doing anything and you imagine that maybe you're going to stagnate. But no, what happens is you stagnate and decay at the same time. And you got to rediscover who you are. That's the problem I think I see with people who wish to retire when they're 65 and sort of live the good life after that. It's like, well, you imagine that maybe you wasted your last 40 years. If you wasted your last 40 years, then you're not just going to be the same person that you were when you were 20 and is able to just live life. Maybe you forgot who you were along the process. You forgot how to be a human in those 40 years. And that's the same thing with the finance people. It's like you save for 5 years, you're just gonna suck it up and you're just gonna, work 80 hours a week and live miserably, but make enough money and then live off the rest of your days in bliss. Well, the problem there is very simple. It's like, how do you know that after those 5 years, you are going to be the same person that you are now? Most likely, you're going to even forget what life was like. You're going to forget how to live life because you're an undeveloped self. That part of you that wanted to explore, that part of you that wanted to adventure, decayed. It didn't stay the same. You're not the same person 5 years later. You're a shadow of the person that you were 5 years ago. And, well, that's what you see here. So Luke says, I have to, a nice little moment. He says, I'll not leave you here. I've got to save you. And Vader says, or in this case, Anakin says, you already have, Luke. And he dies. It's beautiful. So then they run this little ceremony for him. They give him the Jedi's funeral, which is quite beautiful. And he resurrects. And he resurrects as a Jedi. It's quite I actually just got chills as I said that. It's a very beautiful thing to watch, It's a very Christian idea, actually. It's something like, no matter how many mistakes that you've made, no matter what you've done wrong, you're not defined by who you are. You're defined by the person who you are and the person who you could be. And if you decide to take action on the person that you could be, then, well, maybe, just maybe, that will be the person that you are. So he dies a hero, and they destroy the Death Star. I didn't even talk about the Death Star in this movie, but they destroy the Death Star, and, well, everybody ends as a hero, you could say. But I wanted to take the end of this to just really explain the actionable steps, the marked differences between Anakin and Luke. Because very simply, there's a crazy difference between the two. It's like they both were born from the same circumstances, right? You look at the left over here, it's very simple. Both born on Tatooine, both of them pretty much had a prophecy. Anakin had a prophecy. Luke was just the only Jedi left, so he kind of had a prophecy, and you had Obi-Wan sort of looking over him. They both had their parents die on Tatooine. They both were hesitant to the change itself, and both of them were born, I'm going to tell you this, from anger and divinity. And it's actually a really interesting idea. The idea here is the virgin birth, right? Anakin was a virgin birth, and the idea of the virgin birth is he's part God, part man, right? Part God, part human. And you could say he was partially divine, but also partially flawed. And, well, that's the idea of the virgin birth. It's like all of us have divine potential, and all of us have our natural flaws of humanity. It's just a matter of which one we choose. We have the capacity to go towards both realms. And in that case, Anakin was born from both. He was born from both the good side and the dark side. And then you could say, well, Luke was born from divinity, and he was also born from literal darkness. He was born from Anakin, who was Darth Vader at that time. And then also, they were manipulated by Sidious. They were completely crushed by the strength of the system, and they had to go overcome the flaws of the Jedi, and they both lost their arm. So they were both in the same situation. They had to go through the same thing, and obviously that was done on purpose. But now you ask the question, what is the difference? What is the difference between the person who became the good side, Luke, and the person who turned to the dark side, Anakin? I got it down to 5 things. It was very difficult, but I got it down to 5 things. First, Luke understood Yoda and Obi-Wan. Anakin only understood Obi-Wan. So we could say that Luke understood the culture of the past and was able to integrate it into himself. Luke embraced suffering, right? He didn't want to run away from the suffering, and that's exactly what he does at the end. Even though he ran away a little bit, in the end, the thing that made him the hero, the thing that made him triumph over evil, was the consciousness, the understanding that he is part machine, and he must overcome that. You have Anakin, who never really considers this, and every time he experienced some sense of suffering, he, decided to run away. He decided, in this case, he says, his mother died, and he said, I hate them. Them being the people that killed his mother. They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals. Running away from his actual feelings. And then you have Luke, who is able to embrace change and also death. And, change and death are almost synonymous in movies. And then Anakin was not able to do that. Luke was able to exhibit self-control, obviously, and Anakin was not. But we're not really sure if self-control was the thing that Anakin was struggling with, because, it's almost as if he was, God, what's the word? He was repressed, right? Like he was completely struggling from repression, and the system in which he was placed really wanted him to, hold back his feelings. So you could say that maybe the repression was the problem of the self-control. We don't really know that, but the final idea is very simple. Luke was able to integrate these figures inside of him. He was able to, realize that it wasn't only him. It wasn't only his ego that was controlling it. There are many different factors that play into it, and there are many different sources of wisdom in which he could take. He doesn't really have to just learn from his rational personality. Instead, he could consult all of them. He can consult Yoda. He can consult, we'll say, his conscience, which is something like Obi-Wan, or something like wisdom. And, Anakin just sort of lost touch. He didn't really pay attention to those things. And by doing this, we could say this is the thing that makes him a Jedi. Luke becomes a Jedi very simply because he's able to accept the flux of life. He's able to, I'll bring it back to over here. Where is it? There we go. He's able to learn from the past. He's able to think in the present, establish his own individuality, become a person, and, think for himself, right? When you're able to think for yourself, that's beautiful. And then finally, he's able to take that and put it into the world. He's able to, take action. And that is maybe the most heroic thing that you could possibly do. So I am going to end this lecture by saying, essentially, take action in the world. If there's anything that you could learn from these movies, it's very simple. Take action in the world. Even if it's going to be wrong action, even if you think it's not going to be correct, there's only one way to know. There's only one way to figure out. And I suggest that you read my book, right? My book is Break Your Bad Habits in 150 Pages, A Hero's Journey. I talk about Star Wars very often in here. And if you are struggling with, bad habits, right? I talked about many of them throughout this movie. Eating, procrastinating, smoking, drinking. There are many, many more. If you're struggling with any of those, it's very simple. This book gives you how to do that from the hero's journey perspective. It gives you a lens, and it gives you a way to, it gives you a frame in which to take action. The entire book is based off action, and it's only 150 pages, so it shouldn't be too terrible to read. So if you're interested, the Amazon link is in the description below, and I really, really hope that you enjoyed these lectures, and I hope that you take all the lessons here and act them out in the world. Thank you.